All right, mock draft 2.0. For my first mock, I just went right down the reverse standings. This time I used Tankathon to simulate the order, and boy, do we have a doozy. The Hornets are your lucky lottery winners. The Dallas Mavericks saw a massive jump, and there were some pretty unlucky teams. I'm excited to dive into it. Number 1, the Hornets have finally caught a break and landed 7'4" French phenom Victor Wembanyama. If I've ever trusted anyone to break Charlotte's current developmental cycle, it's the guy who is leading a professional French league in points and blocks, and is for all intents and purposes the best draft prospect we have ever seen. Honestly, I'm not a massive fan of what the Hornets have constructed over the last few years. LaMelo Ball is obviously a star, Mark Williams is a fine pick and covers Wembanyama well, PJ Washington is good but may not be around much longer, and that's about it. In the least, Wembanyama's fit next to LaMelo Ball would be enough to get me excited. As I explained in my last mock draft, I'm not totally sure that Wembanyama should be expected to carry the offensive load in his first few seasons, especially with everything that he offers on the defensive end, so LaMelo can help shoulder that early. Also, with Ball's passing ability, there are just so many wrinkles that Charlotte could implement in the two-man game, and that's not even counting any potential players they add to that core. Easy pick here, Scoot Henderson 2nd overall to the Houston Rockets. Hyper athlete, dominated the G League at just 17 years old. I think he's a future perennial all-star at the point guard position, and maybe most importantly, he's going to bring that energy, fire, and competitive spirit that I think Houston could really use right now. I personally am not a fan of the Kevin Porter Jr. experiment at point guard, and I think the Rockets are in dire need of a lead ball handler and game settler, and luckily for them, they're nabbing the best in the class here at number 2. I think basically every major prospect Houston has fits well next to Scoot. He takes pressure off of Jalen Green as a scorer and a true facilitator. He allows Green to stay active off ball. Jabari Smith Jr., who I'm still very much a fan of, requires a talent at the point guard position. And Scoot would be an active cutter, transition, and lob threat for Şengün, passing out of the high and low post. Wembanyama is obviously the goal for every team, but I think he requires a little more of a hard reset for Houston opposed to Scoot. Alright, perhaps the most interesting pick in this entire mock, Dallas officially jumps from 10th best odds to the 3rd overall pick, not only retaining it, but landing a solid one in the process. With the options available, I think Brandon Miller is the no-brainer selection here. He's a lanky 6'9" sharpshooter, as well as a fluid scorer and passer. Miller is genuinely a seamless fit next to Luka Doncic. And while being an older prospect typically isn't a great thing, he's old enough that he wouldn't feel like a complete project swing for the Mavs organization and fan base. He shot 38% from 3 on 7.5 3-point attempts per game, and shot 86% from the free throw line. I think it's safe to say his shooting is going to be a weapon at the next level, especially next to the most gravitational player in the league. More than that, Miller projects to be a high-level secondary scorer and playmaker, a solid individual and team defender, and just the perfect wing piece for the modern NBA. This will likely be one of my more unpopular selections, Amen Thompson 4th overall to the Trailblazers. There will undoubtedly be Portland fans in the comments of this video telling me that they aren't going to be drafting a guard, and they're probably right. I get it. This move likely signals the end of Dame's time with the team. But if I'm their GM, which I am in this video, I'm more than ready to move into the next phase, and there's potentially nothing that would make me more excited for the next Blazers era than an Amen Thompson and Shaedon Sharpe backcourt duo. They already left the 2022 NBA draft with the most athletic player, who by the way showed tremendous upside near the end of his rookie season and is just 19 years old. With this pick, they would leave the 2023 draft with the most athletic too. Despite Thompson already being older than the reclassified Sharpe, he would be a project pick for the ages. Thompson and Sharpe, both singularly as well as a duo, would simply be able to access parts of the game that go relatively untouched for the rest of the league. And Thompson's upside as a high-flying scorer and passer is super intriguing and complements Shaedon Sharpe well. Plus, I trust the Trailblazers to develop their draftees. This would likely be a devastating blow for Pistons fans who were expecting a little more after suffering the worst record of the season, and of course they'd explore trading this pick in exchange for win-now players, but leaving with Walker would hardly be looked at as a negative for anyone. There is a little skill set redundancy with Walker and Isaiah Stewart, but outside of that, Jarris plugs seamlessly into a lineup of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Bogdanovich, and Jalen Duren. Offensively, he wouldn't have to force anything as a scorer and can use his underrated connective passing skills in a system that's going to have to learn to be adaptable off ball anyway. Big situations between Walker and Duren are already giving the opposition nightmares, and I haven't even mentioned yet that Jarris is one of the best defensive prospects in the class and has real anchor potential in the league. This wouldn't be the flashiest pick, but he is a winning basketball player, and that was apparent at Houston. Okay, massive bummer for San Antonio falling to 6th, but I have the Spurs selecting Cam Whitmore here. In my heat check breakdown I did on Cam, I underlie a ton of concerns and questions I have about Whitmore's overall game, and I typically don't love his fit as an upside swing with a lot of teams, but rather a high-octane role player with some situational upside. But, that being said, given San Antonio's organizational track record and value surrounding this pick, which I don't feel is great, I'm totally fine with Whitmore being the pick here, and I like his upside in the Spurs system. They've done a great job of amassing passer and playmakers, ones that would help Whitmore thrive off ball, and they have one of the only true leashes in the league to give him developmental on-ball minutes. If I'm San Antonio in this situation, I personally take the risk on him being great over taking a low-ceiling, high-floor player. But Whitmore's floor isn't all that bad due to his innate athleticism regardless. One of my personal favorite fits, and one that would likely get me shunned by Magic fans globally, Anthony Black to Orlando 7th overall. I'm a big fan of this lengthy, forward-driven project that the Magic have embarked on, and I think Black, a jumbo 6'7" point guard, slots into it well. He's a great mix of true point guard with great playmaking ability and some off-ball instincts in case Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, or Marco Fultz wants to continue running the show. Not to mention, he's potentially the best perimeter defender in the class and is a strong defensive playmaker as he averaged over 2 steals per game at Arkansas. I know, the spacing will be a big issue, but my personal draft philosophy, I don't believe in addressing that this high, especially with another pick on the way just a few selections later and shooters in that range. Sorry Pacers fans, here we are again, Taylor Hendricks at number 8 overall. I just really like his fit, and I don't feel any pull from any other prospects to usurp Hendricks from this spot. I think he's both the best fit and best available here for Indiana. As a floor spacer and switchable defender, I think Hendricks slots in great next to one of the best playmakers in the league in Tyrese Halliburton, an ever-developing guard in Benedict Mathurin, and extremely versatile frontcourt piece Miles Turner. Turner and Hendricks would just be a nightmare defensive frontcourt, and the backcourt can hold its own on that end too. I think the Pacers are a piece away from being a piece away, but Hendricks would certainly be a welcome addition to a strong and growing core. I am drafting Azar Thompson to the Wizards at number 9. I don't trust the Wizards' recent draft history or their developmental track, but I'm going to bank on what I've heard of both the Thompson twins, that they're exceptionally hard workers and fiery competitors, and I think I'm just going to hope that that outweighs the recent Washington woes. With elite athleticism and hounding on-ball defense, I don't think Thompson is some focal point of a potential rebuild for the Wizards, but I do think he could be a nice middle ground pick between a complete ground-up project and a win-now player. Despite being fairly raw, he does offer some pretty immediately translatable skills, and I think he'll be able to hold his own on the NBA court sooner than people think. We likely won't see any sort of Washington rebuild anytime soon, but Azar would be a nice starting point if it happened. I think the Jazz can kind of take their pick regarding needs at this point, so I've gone with my best available player in Baylor's Keontae George, 10th overall, which I personally think is a bit of a steal for his talents. In my eyes, George is going to be a clairvoyant, 3-level scorer who can make hustle and effort plays on the other end, and I think that fits in well next to the Jazz's current untradeable pieces in Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. He's a true tweener combo guard, right smack dab in the middle between point guard and pure shooting guard, and is very much still honing his skills at both positions, his passing and playmaking, and upping his efficiency as a shooter. But I really like his potential as a hybrid guard down the line, and he could just be the next great Jazz guard in the right scenario. Here you go, Magic fans, a peace offering for drafting Amen, Keontae, and Anthony Black with my last 3 Orlando picks. You finally get your guy, Grady Dick, 11th overall. Another easy and simple fit. He is one of the better pure shooters that I have ever scouted, and at 6'8", he fits the mold that Orlando seems to be searching for well. He shot 40% on over 5 3-point attempts per game as a freshman and has plenty of shot variety intermingled. I think he's going to be a terrific team player and willing passer. He's sneakily athletic and would fit great next to the Magic's plethora of playmakers. My sole worry about Orlando moving forward in their rebuild is defense. Not that Banchero or Wagner are bad defensively by any means, but there don't seem to be any seamless fits on that end of the court. They finished as a bottom 6 defensive team last season, and nobody seems interested in adding defense to the mix in 2023, which I don't think Grady Dick really addresses either, hence my earlier Anthony Black selection. 12th overall, I have Oklahoma City selecting Leonard Miller of the G League Ignite. After watching 82 full Thunder games this season, I think addressing the front court, even with Chet Holmgren getting back into the mix next year, is an absolute must for OKC in this draft. And despite me being higher than the consensus, I think this is a great range for Miller. At 6'10", he's a really non-traditional forward wing hybrid with very few true big man tendencies, but he's exactly the amount of weird that the Thunder front office could get behind. As a front court pairing, I think he covers Holmgren well as an elite rebounder, 11 per game in the G League, and as a fluid, high-effort defender and potential weak-side shot blocker. He's also a great transition threat, both running the floor himself and looking ahead after grabbing defensive rebounds. He's got a ways to go in terms of face-up scoring or outside shooting, but I like the swing here. He makes a funky Thunder squad even funkier. 13th overall, I have Toronto selecting Cason Wallace out of Kentucky. I was not anticipating Wallace falling this far. It's just kind of how the cookie crumbled, but I would not anticipate this to happen on draft night 2023. Perhaps pound for pound the best defender in the class with the ability to swap in and out of primary ball handling duties, Wallace would be a great replacement with the impending departure of Fred VanVleet. Toronto is another team I trust to spend solid time and development on prospects, so I buy Cason's upside as a spot-up shooter and off-ball scorer, alongside Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and more, despite that not necessarily being a strength of his in college. Last but not least, I have New Orleans selecting Nick Smith Jr. of Arkansas with the 14th and final lottery selection. Rather than opt for a pure shooter, I have gone with a 50-50 mix of both drafting for need and one of the best players available with Nick Smith Jr. He had a very up and down season with the Razorbacks due to injury, but still offers massive upside as a shooting guard next to Dyson Daniels as the future backcourt. If his on-ball skills never come around, he in the least offers various levels of three-point shot making and net even defense for the Pels. That is it for this video. I've now done one mock via the reverse standings. I've done one from Tankathon. The next one I bring to you will be actually via the lottery results, which is exciting. We'll actually know what teams have what picks. Let me know what you thought of this mock, where I went right, where I went wrong, who you draft for your team, what are some interesting fits, and we'll see you next time.